All right, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Seth is giving me the thumbs up. Matt's giving me the thumbs up. All right, you guys are going to have to unmute yourself. It looks like we've got several dozen people, several dozen attendees attending. Welcome, everybody, to the Twins Daily Postgame Pint. It's something we're going to be trying to do on a regular basis for the Twins games this year. How does my sound sound? Everybody can hear me okay?
Sounds good.
I'm not hearing myself in my headphones. So, I want to give all the people who are attending here a little heads up on how this is going to work. You will notice in your control bar that you have a chat and that you also have a Q&A. So let's start out with, I'd like you all to try using out the chat. We're going to start by introducing what our post-game pint is. If you want to put that in the chat, I'd love to see what we've got. I've got hold these up. Gleeman of the Geek glass from 2018 and an Able Old Trusty beer. Anybody else got anything out there at on the panel?
Oh, I wasn't joking when I said I was bringing coffee.
Good. This is what I like to hear from my editor, Tom.
With a 4-year-old,
I like to hear that very much.
Yeah, 2 young kids in the house. I'm like,
get those game recaps up, get those threads up, get those stories edited. Yeah, I want them. I want you up till 4 a.m., baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Are you still doing any late night feedings with the kids?
No, luckily.
Okay.
Both very good sleepers, but still, if I would have had a beer during the game, I don't even think I would have made it to the 9th inning. You know, I would have been.
It was a long game.
Fall asleep.
It was a really long game.
Yeah.
How about you, Matthew? What you up to?
I probably even lamer than coffee, honestly. I have a Blue Moon Belgian white.
No.
I like Blue Moon.
I think it's delicious. It's just I always feel inferior to you, John, when it comes to the hipster beers. You know, I don't play on your level, and this is what we had in the fridge. So.
Oh, okay. I'm a big fan of whatever you have in the fridge. How about you, Sether? You going with the spring water again?
Well, it's a little bit different. I think it's Dasani tonight. It's on the rocks. The rocks doing pretty well, but
good. Shaken, not stirred.
Yeah, not quite as risque. I didn't put any raspberry lemonade in it tonight, so we're good.
That's a celebratory bottled water. That's
right. That's right. I've got a Modest Dream Yard in the comments. I've got a McDonald's Mocha Frappe.
All right, there we go. I'm not the only one drinking coffee
here. I've got my son waving a phone at me as if I'm supposed to know what he's talking about.
Your phone.
What's that? Oh, check my phone. Okay, got it.
Just trying not to disturb you. How'd that go?
You'll be okay. Yeah. All right. A Cigar City Highlight. Memories of spring training down in Florida. I was drinking from a Fort Myers pint glass earlier today, in part because it felt a little bit like spring training at the beginning of the game. But let's dig into the game a little bit. The Twins win 10-5. Bats came alive versus Lucas Giolito, which I don't think a lot of us really saw coming. They were aided in part by brutal Chicago White Sox defense, especially in the first inning, but really throughout the game. They failed to make plays or they sort of left off where they started started where they left off last year. Barrios looked. We'll probably dive into that a little bit, I guess, in our game takes. He did go 4 innings. He outlasted Giolito. He pitched through 75 pitches. I think he got 1 strikeout is all. And then the Twins marched out their bullpen, and they marched out really some of their higher leverage arms all the way through there to kind of shut things down. Barrios gave up 5 runs in his 4 innings pitched. Or actually gave up 5 runs in his first 2 innings pitched, got out of the last 2 innings without any additional runs. And then, meanwhile, the Twins kept tacking on runs. the big highlights were Max Kepler hitting a leadoff home run on the first pitch, and then his second at bat also hitting a home run. But really, the hits came up and down the lineup. The RBI came up and down the lineup. We saw a little bit of the depth that the Twins lineup was supposed to provide. We also saw a couple of the gaps that are kind of apparent, I think, in the Twins lineup too. So let's go around the horn and find out what is Seth. What is your what topic came out of this game that you wanted to discuss?
For me, it was absolutely the bullpen. Obviously, Barrios, as good as his stuff was, I mean, he was hitting 96, 97 consistently. The curveball sure looked sharp. He threw a few good changeups, just wasn't able to miss bats for whatever reason. But the bullpen, you mentioned it. Trevor May came in and looked great. Tyler Duffy looked great. Clippard looked good. And I can't imagine. Cody Stashek was amazing, just tremendous. So I just think it speaks to the bullpen depth, as others have mentioned on Twitter and places. Zach Littell, Sergio Romo, Taylor Rogers didn't pitch yet. Curious what will happen tomorrow, but to me the bullpen was the story of the night, even on a night when the team scored 10 runs.
Were you surprised that they stayed
with Kepler yet?
Yeah. Were you surprised they stayed with the sort of some of the high leverage arms all the way through the 7th inning? I mean, I guess they couldn't really. They were dealing with a fairly small lead up until the top of the 7th when they scored those additional 3 insurance runs on the Luis Arias single. And then I guess Stashek is probably a lower leverage arm. They could have gone to, for instance, Littell and Taylor at the end there. So maybe, Rocco Baldelli pulled his foot off the gas a little bit, as I think he probably should do. But did it surprise you that they went with as early as they did to like Trevor May and Duffy?
I'll jump in and then step up, but I just feel like they almost needed to do that to get guys innings because they haven't pitched since at least Monday. They had the exhibition game and very few pitched in that game on Wednesday night. I don't think they played on Tuesday, so it was at least Monday. So I think it was almost a strategy to get people in. I do think going to Stashek finally was an acknowledgement we're up by 5. If they would have been up by 2 still, you'd probably go Littell for an inning, Rogers for an inning, maybe Romo for an inning, Rogers in the 9th.
Yep. I forgot about Romo, right?
This could have happened if they had not gotten those 3 runs in the 7th.
Matt, Tom, What do you think? What do you think about the bullpen tonight?
Well, I thought that sequence of getting Barrios out early, seeing trouble and deciding to be proactive instead of reactive, and then going May Duffy right away, that was, with Clippard sandwiched in, but that was familiar, or it should be, from down the stretch last year. Baldelli did that a few times in key games, especially against Cleveland when starters got themselves into trouble. It was May and Duffy into the middle of the game, and we'll figure out the back few innings when we need to fill them out. And last year, in all the most important games, it kind of worked out like this, where they were able to create a lead and then widen it through those middle innings because May and Duffy so effectively shut down the opponent, and then you have the flexibility at the end. So good job by Rocco of not keeping those bullets back, I guess. And then, in the 8th and 9th, he was able to back off the gas pedal a little.
We should point out that the Twins do have an off day on Monday. They can afford to be a little aggressive with their bullpen for these 3 days. The White Sox probably don't have that luxury. They go straight from this into a 3-game set with Cleveland. They come out of the gates hard versus a lot of folks. Tom, any thoughts on the bullpen?
I just wanted to point out that Duffy did get hot during Clippard's inning, so that's more than likely why he was used.
Good point.
Bullpen guys don't like to get warmed up and then not used. There's a term for that.
And probably less than ever this year, honestly, just because of the strange, the sequence that Seth was describing of the days since these guys have all pitched and the shape of the progress of preparing for the season. They're going to want to get up and in as often as possible.
Tom, what did you see in the game? What was your big takeaway from tonight?
Well, I think I agree with Seth that the bullpen was very impressive. We saw some of that potential, the White Sox lineup, and what they did to Barrios, and then to have them to get shut down to that extent with the bullpen. But kind of to go a different direction, I was really encouraged at how the team hit in situations with runners on with the bases loaded. That was really one weakness of, if there's anything you can pick on with the 2019 Twins lineup, greatest home run hitting team of all time, but they had the third worst OPS in baseball with the bases loaded last year. It just seemed like that was like a cursed situation. And even over the course of a long season, that's a relatively small number of plate appearances. It's not a huge, a lot you can draw from that, but it just feels nice that the first game out, they get I think Mitch Garver had a sac fly with the bases loaded, and then Polanco's go-ahead hit was a bases loaded hit, and then Arise added a bases loaded hit later. So it felt like almost they had more success with the bases juiced in this game than they had in certain months of 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That was really encouraging. I mean, there were times when I was frustrated. I think that seventh inning, I was frustrated with the Sano at bat. I was frustrated with a little bit with the Cave at bat. I didn't expect a lot out of Cave in that situation. He was facing a left-hander, as I recall. And frankly, I think one of the things we're probably I was at first I was a little surprised to see Sano batting eighth. He should absolutely be batting eighth or maybe ninth right now. I really feel like he's behind the rest of the hitters due to the quarantine that he went through at the beginning of spring training, missing the first 2 weeks of already shortened spring training. He's basically only had a little over a week to get ready. And when he missed that grooved fastball in the first inning that could have probably might very well have knocked Giolito out of the game in the first inning, that struck me as the sort of thing that Sano doesn't miss early on, and then really the rest of that at bat, I kept seeing kind of him just kind of not getting what he wanted to get. But they did. You're right. I mean, they ended up getting to some of their more patient and disciplined hitters with runners in scoring position. You mentioned Polanco. You mentioned Garver. Arise came through with the big one, right? Those are guys that you want in that position. To be fair, the lineup is full of guys like that. Right?
Yeah, when Luis Arise is your number 9 hitter, I mean, that's not a fun lineup for anybody to face. That's the guy you have to turn over to the top of the lineup to. Wow.
Yep. Matthew, how about you? What did you see in the game today you want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about that top of the 7th inning, because I think that was obviously where the Twins put it on ice. And, you saw the quality of the White Sox at bats. This is something I think about a young team, and specifically this team. We saw it last year. Once you kind of throw a knockout punch at them, then Tim Anderson's strike zone becomes anything that floats toward the plate. And they kind of go down, they sort of folded. So it was really important to get those runs across, but the specific way they did it and the way it unfolded on the White Sox side. And now we can talk about the dynamics of a 60-game season instead of a 162-game season. When Rick Renteria made the choice to go bring in Aaron Bummer, who is the White Sox relief ace this year. Colomé may be their closer, but Bummer is their stud reliever. And for Eddie Rosario to step up in a key spot, 2 on, none out, Bummer is now locked into the game by the new 3-batter minimum.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a good at bat, and he did. He worked a 3-2 count and got the bat on the ball. And they kept that line moving. Rosario went 3-2. Garver went 3-2. You're right, Cave and Sano didn't have great at bats, but then Arias did what Arias always does and made the field look like it was 280 degrees instead of 90. And it just, the whole sequence, getting Aaron Bummer to throw 26 high-stress pitches so that not only did you throw the knockout punch against him and beat the White Sox tonight, a potential, rival for the division or whatever seeding there is in these stupid expanded playoffs, but you also gassed their best pitcher.
Yeah.
And if he's available tomorrow, it's on a very limited basis. And if he is, then he's not available at all on Sunday. And when there are only 60 games, any game you're taking one of their best relievers off the board for, and you beat him in the game that he came in and pitched in, it's a massive accumulation of this kind of extra strategic value.
We got a question in the question area. We've also got a lot of things we're going to get to in the chat area. So absolutely keep putting stuff in the chat area, everybody. We're going to get to those in a second. But since you brought up Rosario, one of the questions we got was Eddie showed increased plate awareness tonight. We all know it was something for him to focus on this offseason. He certainly talked about it in spring training. Trend or mirage? Let's go. Trend or mirage? Matthew, you started up the top. You brought up the name first, so you go. You tell me, trend or mirage?
Anytime we're talking about one game, it's a good idea not to bet that it's a trend. But I will say, guys in similar situations to Rosario, in the recent past, guys like just last year, Nicolas Castellanos, the year before, Lorenzo Cain, players who are nearing free agency and starting to hear, whether it's in arbitration hearings or just in articles, things that are floating around and getting to them in the clubhouse, when they're starting to worry that their lack of plate discipline or their lack of attractiveness to analytics savvy teams might dent their earning power, they start to make adjustments faster than you might think. So keep an eye on it.
He can see that just by looking up and down the lineup. Well, frankly, you can look at the guy batting right behind him in the lineup tonight. I really liked the Rosario to Garver tandem. I loved it in the first inning where you see how difficult Rosario can make it be a very difficult guy to pitch to because he'll hit anything, right? And then you have if he gets on, then Garver's exactly the opposite, right? He will not swing at that stuff that even versus a tough right-hander like Giolito. What about you, Tom? What do you think? Trend or mirage?
I would tend to agree with Matt. I was very excited to see Eddie Rosario.
What are we agreeing with Matt? Because I never heard the word trend or mirage come out of his mouth. What did you choose, Matt?
The agreement is to not pick one.
For the moment, yeah, I still think Eddie Rosario is Eddie Rosario. So I guess I have to say mirage. But
I was looking and he got to 3 balls in his last plate appearance, I think, and I had the tweet ready. That was going to be the first time he drew 2 non-intentional walks in a game since June of 2018. So he has drawing a walk today, taking an bat where he didn't swing at five pitches straight from Lucas Giolito in his first plate appearance. He didn't swing at. I'll take just sort of baby steps, and he's not going to become Luis Ariz where he's commanding the strike zone like that, but. If, like Matt said, it seems like Eddie understands the value in trying to gain some skill in that department. So I'll take it as a trend that this is something that Eddie Rosario will be focusing on. How's that for a non-answer answer?
Seth, what do you think?
Have I ever mentioned that I love watching Eddie Rosario play baseball?
He's fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Love watching Eddie Rosario play. It can be very frustrating at times. And, I think the trend has been coming over 4 or 5 years. And, one game certainly isn't going to change an opinion on anyone. But, he has said all the right things all spring, all summer camp about wanting to be a little bit more patient. I talked to people, going back 4 or 5 years when he actually got sent down at one point his second season. And they always said it isn't so much about controlling the strike zone. It's just finding an understanding of which pitches you can mash. And sometimes when he's on, he knows that, and he'll avoid the other pitches that make him look silly. When things are going bad, it's completely the opposite. So
that's an interesting point. Yeah.
I think the trend has happened over 5 or 6 years, and tonight, let's just be hopeful. How about that?
Well, and if you buy into into the injury last year being part of the problem, you can see where if the real adjustment is him thinking he can hit stuff that he can't actually hit because he's injured, as opposed to, he can't actually hit because he's just not that good. But he is that good, and he does seem to have a good sense of what he can hit and what he cannot hit when he's really rolling. Maybe if you get an injury like that, something that's kind of sapping you have trouble adjusting, and that's one of the reasons why you end up striking out more. It's not so much a matter of plate discipline; it's just a matter of having to re-gauge what you can do and what you cannot do. I don't know.
Hey, John, can I jump in here with a quick update on Rich Hill?
Yes, please.
So Rocco Baldelli just told the press after the game that He didn't say anything about an injury. He really didn't explain it other than to say that they're pushing him back to where they originally had him set. In other words, they had moved him up to take Odorizzi's spot, but they decided to push him back to the 4th spot or 5th spot, whatever that may be, however you look at that, and Dobnik's just ready to start. So maybe there's some code in there that I didn't understand or read into, but other than they just made this decision, which, again, why would that have to come out in the 7th inning of game 1 as opposed to we decided that,
were they waiting to see if they needed to rely on
maybe on
Dobnik in this
Tuesday?
game?
Well, I'm
Yeah,
curious.
so
Do you think that this move with Rich Hill might have something to do with the expanded postseason? Now that there's 16 teams that are going to make the playoffs, you might as well just freeze Rich Hill and Carbonite until September.
Well, or
40 years old.
I don't think his contract would much care for that.
Well,
that's a good point. But if they're being honest about, we're sliding him back to where we originally had him, maybe what they are trying to say then is we are giving Dobnak Jake Odorizzi's first turn in the rotation.
Right.
With the idea that instead of slotting Odorizzi now into the 5th game of the season, we're going to let him heal an extra day or two. And maybe that does go back to the expanded playoffs. But there are a lot of different things that could go into this. So everything from you only got 4 innings out of Berrios tonight, and maybe you're not wanting to stretch Hill out too much just yet because he's 40. So you'd like to slide him back to where you don't need the volume on this particular day when you start Rich Hill. Maybe you just watched the swings that Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert and Tim Anderson were taking and went, yeah, maybe not so much with the lefty against these guys.
Well, maybe since you didn't have to use Dobnik, you've got him available. You didn't have to worry about long relief. You've got him available. Or maybe Rich Hill woke up with a sore neck, and the last thing you want to do is, it can be a lot of different stuff. I'm really surprised we didn't get a more complete explanation, actually. So, but the bottom line is they think they're going to bump him back, presumably to one of the 2 games of versus the Cardinals, right?
Yeah, because Maeda will still start on Sunday. Presumably Bailey will start on Tuesday unless they give him a day and put Hill on Tuesday. But, none of that's been announced. They won't announce that until Monday probably. But I guess I would just add, if pitch count and that was a concern, I kind of agree with Matt here that maybe it was the right-handed swings that were being taken by those big boppers. And Abreu didn't even really do anything. And, maybe that's part of it. But the other side of that, though, is if you're talking about piggybacking, you could have Hill piggyback with Dobnak or Hill piggyback with Smeltzer or Thorpe. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe you want to get that right-hander in there, see how far you can go, and then go to Thorpe or Smeltzer, whoever the case is. And
I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a Dobnik Smeltzer piggyback tomorrow.
Yeah, I would almost expect that, to be honest. It's just a matter of will Dobnik go 5 or 3, and
right.
The fact that they had a Rise batting 9th tells me they're not going to put any extra pressure on the young guys than needed. So maybe they are just going to say, hey, Randy, get us through the order once, and let's see what happens.
We have a Justin Atkins in the chat giving us an expected scouting report on us all in there. So.
We'll get to that in a second. Okay. Maybe we should start going through some of the questions and some of the webinar chat stuff. Tom, you want to start reading off some of the questions or the chat stuff?
Well, I think a lot of the thing that I see that's nice is a lot of people mentioning nice things about the White Sox. And I think, last year they weren't very good.
Robert's impressive.
Jesus. This is a team that hasn't been good for a while. So maybe some Twins fans don't realize, they beat a good team tonight. And some other people are mentioning that it's time to talk about Max Kepler. And that seems like a fair comment.
Yeah.
I did bring him up earlier briefly, just saying, have we talked about him yet?
I'll say this. In spring training, he was one of the topics on the first day that Rocco Baldelli addressed. And basically, Rocco Baldelli's message on him was, there is no limit for this guy. I don't know where he's going to go or what he's going to do, but I think the quote was something like, he's already sort of beyond anything I can teach him. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just, he does not know what's next. He doesn't know which way he's going to go, what he's going to develop next, but he didn't see a limit. And I mean, what is he now, 26 years old?
27.
27?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've obviously watched and followed the Twins minor league system for a long time. I started making the trips to Cedar Rapids or Beloit 10, 11 years ago. Kepler is one of those guys that as soon as you saw him, you said, okay, that's just a ton of talent. But even when he was in Cedar Rapids, he had a completely different swing. You understood why at that time he probably struggled a little bit and he had room to grow. But at the same time, you could still see it. And now he's cleaned up the swing and he's cleaned up the outfield defense. He's, at that time he was getting some time at first base. And, it's weird to say because obviously all guys have an opportunity to improve throughout the player development. But, I mean, Kepler has come so far.
He's a little bit kind of
seeing him.
Feels like a late starter too, right? Like, I mean, I know he was signed as a 16-year-old out of Germany, right? So not that late of a starter. He's not Whitfield, playing softball until he's 17 years old, right? But how much baseball developed? It's not like you grew up in the Dominican and he was playing baseball every day since he was 12 either. Like, this is somebody who's, to some extent, it feels like you don't know all the stuff he can do. Even now, you don't know all the stuff he can do.
So I talked to a guy from Australia on a Zoom call this past week, who was signed at 16. And, of course, the guys from Australia, or in Kepler's case, from Germany, they can't go play in the Dominican Summer League. So they can't jump in and start playing against 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They got thrown right into the Gulf Coast League, where generally it's 18, maybe some 19-year-olds, some guys in college. And then Kepler, actually, I think he spent 2 years in Elizabethton, which sounds like a bad thing. But, again, with his limited experience, limited playing, all of that kind of stuff, it was totally beneficial. And really, once he got to Double-A, that was his first year. That was his breakout year. He was amazing. And since then, he's just continued to do it. So, I mean, kudos to the people in Europe that signed him. I mean, they deserve just a ton of credit because that's tougher than just saying, hey, let's give them a bunch of money and see what happens. They start out with things getting pretty tough when they're playing against a lot of older players.
I love how aggressive he is on the first pitch. I love how he goes up there looking to smash the first pitch, even the first pitch of the ball game.
It's funny how plate discipline isn't really a concern when you're doing stuff like that, huh?
Right. Yeah. Well, plate discipline doesn't mean sit and wait for the first pitch to go over and be in an 0-1 count. It means don't swing at ridiculous pitches. So.
Joe Mauer hasn't even been retired 2 years, and we're just saying that like he never existed. Jeez, John.
I'm kind of surprised. Like, Mitch Garver doesn't hardly ever swing at the first pitch. He had one with the bases loaded that was right down the middle. I want to say 93, 94, according to the FSN telecast. And I just sat there thinking, oh, man, if that was Joe Mauer, Twitter and everything would be going crazy right about now.
Right. Well, and I will just say two quick things about Kepler. One, you're right that, he came into the organization young, but it took a long time before, it was a really steep learning curve for a long time. Right. And you can't really start to evaluate a player till that curve starts to flatten out a little bit, I think. And also that in the new book by Kylie McDaniel and Eric Longenhagen, Future Value, which is about evaluating prospects and player development in this modern technological age, one thing they talk about is that there is a point after you've been in pro ball and gotten a certain number of plate appearances and games in pro ball where your talent starts to the concrete starts to set and you're not going to see big leaps any longer. But that clock really does start ticking once you start to see the flattening of that learning curve for a player. And so guys who are signing out of Latin America, signing especially from a place like Germany or Australia, where they've had far less exposure than a guy who's coming out of big time high school circuit and playing travel ball all summer, it's a big difference. And so there was going to be more for Kepler to learn for longer than, an average American prospect in the same situation. And then also that it's a big testament to the new player development, things that are in place since Falvey and Levine took over, that he is taken off the way he has, because every year there's another step, another progression that he's making, and those are new lanes and new chances that they're taking in his development that the previous regime would not probably have taken in the same way.
We've got a question from a couple of different people saying, should we worry about Barrios? Are you at all worried about Barrios after watching this outing? I will turn it over to my
No
guys. I know Seth isn't.
It's one game. Giolito had a bad game. Scherzer had a bad game. He was throwing 97. He had a sharp curveball. The changeup, again, I thought was good at times. I know I said that earlier, but the stuff's there.
Doesn't get many swings and misses.
And
Well,
that'll
he
happen.
did get 7 swinging strikes on 75 total pitches. That's not good, but that's not terrible. And I would also add that his strike percentage was 69.3 tonight, which is really good, very solid. I think it just, unfortunately, there was a gap where he kind of lost command, and the White Sox took advantage of it. Am I concerned in the overall Jose Barrios? Not really, but I think kind of to work this into that Kepler conversation, I am starting to get a little bit concerned that maybe some of that concrete is starting to dry on Jose Barrios. And, is he going, there's not that many guys that reach true ace status. There's like 15 guys in the league at any time that you can call an ace. And I think the longer we kind of go without Jose Barrios stepping into that territory, and there's nothing wrong with being a number 2, but I'm starting to get a little concerned that he may not make it to that upper echelon.
He'll probably have about 60 to 80 million reasons that being a number 2 is a good thing. Soon.
Yeah, not that many guys make it that high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any concerns about Barrios?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say yes, just maybe to veer in the opposite direction. I'm kind of saying the same thing.
You are a contrary person, man.
That's
no question.
All the way to the core. But what I did see, and the stuff was fine, and that is encouraging in its own right. That means he's healthy. That means his body's feeling good. But I think there were things you might have hoped that he had time to prepare and have polished coming into this, just because, it's been months, and yes, it was a very interrupted preparation phase, but he pitched in intra-squad. They built up the arm. They were hoping to get, into like the 80s in his pitch count, right? So what I would have hoped to see tonight was better command of his fastball to the glove side, which would have set up the changeup. He was throwing, I think Seth mentioned, he threw a fistful of pretty good changeups. They weren't missing bats, and the big reason is he couldn't set it up by throwing the fastball to the other side of the plate so that the changeup had a fade that the batter wasn't really ready for. They were able to shop in the same lane all game on that third base side of home plate, because that's the only place that Barrios was effectively locating his heat. And the other thing with the breaking ball, it did have the right shape. It did have the right velocity. He couldn't get it down consistently. He couldn't throw that strike to ball breaking ball that a pitcher wants to have anytime in any outing to get swings and misses. He had the ball to strike, landing it in the strike zone, and he had kind of the ball to just bury it if he was way ahead in the count. But he didn't get ahead in the count that often because the White Sox were being really aggressive and he was leaving his fastball over too much at the plate. So he's going to have to have better command, especially of the curveball, strike to ball, and the fastball to the first base side of home, or we're going to see more of these issues. It won't always be this pronounced because, yes, some of it was just the White Sox being a good lineup that was ready for him. But there are some things that he has to improve right now.
Let me ask you this, Matt. I mentioned that he was hitting 96 and even 97 a few times. He may have just been amped up because I think he's at his best when he's more 93 to 95.
I agree.
Obviously,
Yeah.
getting 97 is great, but I think you'd have better command, better movement, better control, all of that if he were 93 to 95. And that might just be a factor of, first game, it's happening a little later than normal. That's just
No, I like that hypothesis a lot. I agree.
We've got I think we've already hit our half-hour mark, and I try to keep these fairly short. We've got one last question that I'll bring up, and then we'll move on. Look forward a little bit. So, based on one game, it says, "What are you most excited about, and what makes you most nervous?" So, I'd say, "What are you encouraged about after the first game, or what are you discouraged by?" Let's each give one of each. I'll start it out to give you guys a little bit of time. Let's see. I'm encouraged by the defense. We saw some shaky stuff, but it definitely, I think the left side of the infield is definitely going to be better with Donaldson over there. I think Polanco can range a little bit more and get to a little more stuff. We did see that goofy play where Encarnacion ended up getting tagged out after just running over the bag completely after getting hit in the leg by the ball. That was clearly not Polanco's best moment, but and neither was it Sano's best moment. That was goes back to the last post-game pint we had. We said there are going to be times where there's going to be sort of bang stuff happening at first base, and Sano, who hasn't played there much, is not going to know exactly what to do. He didn't know to leave that bag and go get that ball. Worked out real well. Encarnacion ended up getting hit and distracted and just missed the base. But in general, I thought Luis Ariz came up with a couple of good defensive plays. I thought Polanco's range was pretty good. Donaldson showed some stuff that he could do. We didn't get much hit to the outfield, so I didn't have to. Rosario was, in the right place at the right time a lot of the time. So in general, I was a little encouraged by the defense tonight. And I guess if I was discouraged about anything, I think Sano's going to have a slow start. I think as a result of that, we're not going to have quite as deep of a lineup as we wanted to have early on in the season. I think Buxton's going to look bad early. I think Sano's going to look bad early. So we're going to have a couple of open spots in the lineup that I was hoping would not be. I think that'll pass soon enough. I wouldn't be shocked if Sano within 2 weeks is terrorizing the middle of the lineup again. But for the beginning here, and especially during these 3-game series versus the White Sox and 4-game series versus Cleveland, I don't think we're going to have all hands on deck. Matt, how about you? What are you encouraged or discouraged by?
Well, I think I'm encouraged by the situational awareness, the rising to the moment. This team is dealing with a lot of expectations, and we know so much already about what the talent is and what the depth is and how they'll be managed. But that at-bat that Rosario put together that I already talked about, with Bummer coming in the 7th inning, not just to get on base, to continue the string, but to do it in a way where he got to 3-0 and then he took a 3-0 fastball that I think otherwise he maybe hacks at, because he knew what he needed to get done in that at-bat. Seeing Barrios, after all the difficulties I just talked about, in the 4th inning, he came out and got the job done and did seem to have a couple of things fall into place. Just shaking off adversity, knowing exactly what needs to get done in this moment, because every single game matters. Maybe less than when we thought only 10 teams were going into the playoffs, but they still matter. And they showed some really good things on that front tonight against, again, a tough opponent. Discouraged, this is my nitpick, and I think there aren't a lot of wrong answers. We know batting order doesn't matter that much. I don't want to see Luis Ariz keep batting 9th. And I hope that they'll shake that off and get him at least up to like 6th soon. I may be too head over heels for him, but the number of things he can do, the way he seems to respond, however you try to align a defense against him, the way he responds to however you decide to pitch him or adjust the way you're pitching him, and the sheer contact ability to come up big when there are people on base and you just need someone to move the ball. it's going to cost you, a third of a plate appearance per game on average to have him bat in ninth instead of sixth. Do that again if, you want to push him up toward the top of the order. You can make a big difference in how much value he can add to the team if you bat him higher.
That's fair.
So,
Tom?
I'm encouraged at how sharp the team looked. I mean, you think about it, they only played one exhibition game against another team.
And I was worried about that, made a big deal of it last time. I feel stupid.
And they didn't look especially good. I was one of these bozos who thought, the pitching is going to be so far in front of the hitting early on because their timing's going to get all this. For them to go out and, obviously the lineup isn't a concern at all in the grand picture, but for them to go out the first time where, it's the lights are on, we're actually facing another team, it's the real deal, it's not some dopey inter-squad scrimmage, and for them to hang up a 10 spot on Lucas Giolito and a completely fresh White Sox bullpen is pretty impressive. I was very encouraged to see how sharp they were.
Discouraged.
I'm a little. This is kind of another nitpicky one. I don't like the fact that Jake Cave was in center field and Max Kepler was in right field. When Buxton's out,
my theory on that was that that means that they're confident that Buxton's going to be back and playing every day soon.
Could be.
They just didn't want Kepler to have to adjust.
My argument is you might want to keep Max fairly comfortable in center field, just in case.
Oh, look at you going after poor Byron.
Things just happen to some guys, and it's not. I'm not pinning anything on Byron. It's the way he plays hard. That's why he's hurt a lot. He plays so hard. I'm not going to take anything away from a guy who plays hard, but it's a fact that he's missed a lot of
his job.
I would like to see Max Kepler in center field if Byron Buxton's not out there, but like you said, there may be some other reasons why they just felt more comfortable with that.
All right, Seth, your turn.
Well, I will give Jake Cave a ton of credit because, first of all, he's been really good the last 2 years and deserves credit. Second of all, to get thrown into the lineup, probably knowing Buxton will start tomorrow or at least Sunday, and getting the big hit, I thought, in the first inning, the 2-run single. When I know so many fans are like, we don't want him there, we don't want him in center, we don't want him here and there. He came up with the big hit.
Yeah,
also, we talked a lot about Eddie Rosario's plate appearance. I like Mitch Garver's sacrifice fly and a great at bat. But the that I want to mention is when it was 5-5 in the fourth, Jorge Polanco came up with the bases loaded, and Evan Marshall was throwing some incredible changeups, and he was way out in front of a couple of them, and he managed to make just enough contact to drive in a 2-run bloop single to center just by making sure he put it into play. And I thought Dick Bramer deserves some credit for saying specifically that, this team is known for the home runs and the bombas, but they also have pretty good just hitting skills. They're good hitters.
How do we feel about Polanco batting third versus right-handers?
Love it. First of all, I think he's really good, and I think putting him between Donaldson and Cruz is great. I think it helps, I just think he's good. I really do. And I just think, separating the right-handers is a good thing, and his switch hittingness, is that a word? I think is a value. The lineup's going to change. It's going to change over time. I think Arise is going to move up, no question about that, especially when Buxton comes back. I think it's adaptable, and I think there's just a lot of good things that can happen. So,
Now I want to hear what you're discouraged about, because that's what the public never hears. They never hear what Seth Stone is down on. But behind the scenes we do, don't we, Todd?
He's down on me. That's the truth. That's where it's going to come. It's going to come to me.
Yeah.
What are you concerned or discouraged by from the game?
Well, first and foremost, Tom mentioned the scouting reports that one of our chat people mentioned, and apparently I look older than people thought that I was, which, I have been blogging for like 18 years. So, I'm not like 20, so.
Well, we're all real old,
Yeah. I guess the other thing, and it's not really anything about the Twins, it's more, I think I was right when it comes to the White Sox. That team is loaded. Their offense is tremendous. Take Garcia out of there and put Madrigal in there at some point, they're going to be contenders. At least for a wild card. However, 8 teams are making the playoffs. They're going to be one of them because they're good.
Will they finish above Cleveland?
No, because Cleveland has Clevenger and Bieber and Lindor.
Okay.
Bieber and Clevenger are both amazing. Bieber had 14 strikeouts in 5 innings tonight or something like that. Yeah.
Will all 3 teams make the playoffs?
The other day about the poll I put up about the best pitcher in the AL Central, Bieber, Clevenger, Barrios, and Giolito. The 2 Cleveland guys are the top guys, so they're going to be there the whole time.
Will the White Sox make the 16-team playoff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That lineup's legit, and Edwin Encarnacion did nothing tonight. He's good. he's as good as Nelson Cruz, except Nelson Cruz last year, of course. But he's put up just an incredible career, and he's still good. So, and you guys talked about it earlier too. Robert's amazing. So that team is going to be good. So, as much as I think the Twins are awesome, and I think they're going to win a lot of games this year, the AL Central is not going to be bad. Obviously Detroit and Kansas City are going to be bad, but Cleveland and Chicago are going to be good.
All right, next game for the Twins is 1:00 tomorrow versus the White Sox. That means we're going to plan on having a post-game pint at 4:00. So go out there, grab get your favorite beverage ready, watch the Twins game, and we'll see you. Twins will be facing Dallas Keuchel, the White Sox big free agent signee, or one of their big free agent signees over the winter. And thank you for joining us. We'd like to get any feedback you have. Continue putting stuff in the chat. If you've got any feedback on this, we'll take a look at it. And we'll be posting this online on Twins Daily soon. And we'll also put the new link out there tomorrow morning for tomorrow's post-game pint. Thank you very much for joining. Bye-bye.